This is the DC McAllister podcast, where we expose the lies of feminism and tell the truth about men and women. And one of the biggest lies out there has been produced by the American Psychological Association in its guidelines for the psychological treatment of men and boys. They put out one about girls and women a while back, but this one's just focusing just on the guys. It's horrible. It's just a piece of garbage. But it does have impact because it affects schools, education, policy, public policy, because people look to the APA as if they know what they're talking about. But really, this whole document is one big liberal, Marxist, social justice warrior document attacking traditional masculinity and attacking men. And the first thing it does is it says that our sexuality is not in any way universal, that it's not objective in nature at all, that it's completely and totally socially constructed. And to help me unpack this today and to keep me on task is my production assistant, Jenny Comfort. So you're going to hear her chiming in once in a while as I discuss this issue. And it's a very serious issue, like I said, because it has an impact on how our boys are educated, how the schools handle this topic, how they treat boys. And one of the main things that the document says is that traditional masculinity they define as being aggressive, sexually abusive, competitive to a fault, violent, and basically all the worst things about what men can be. And they define that as traditional masculinity. And they say that that needs to be reconstructed, replaced into something more. And what was really interesting is that there is a book called Manhood in America by Michael Kimmel. And he's one of kind of the foundational type people who have promoted this kind of thinking about masculinity and it being very subjective and that we need to overturn this kind of traditional masculinity stuff. And he said that what we need is a new masculinity for the new century. We need a democratic manhood. So have you ever heard of that before?
Never. What is a democratic manhood?
Okay, what is democratic manhood? All right, you ready? It means gender politics of inclusion. That's all kind of warning signs, bells should go off on that one, of standing up against injustice based on difference. So that's the main thing that they're talking to everyone about, that democratic manhood, and that the masculinity of all of you guys today you need to be more inclusive. That means you can't let women not be in your masculine group. You definitely can't be homophobic, so you can't let feminized homosexuals be in your group, or trans people, or any other people on the million gender spectrum.
So anybody that wants to be masculine can be masculine.
Yes, needs to be accepted into the masculine group. Now, if that's just all that they were saying, that'd be one thing, as problematic as that is. But they're not. They're saying, actually, what you need to do is not include these people into your group, but change what you are. Change what masculinity is. So we've had some outliers, outliers, more feminized men and feminism also with women, wanting them to be included in the masculine world. And they really can't, because there's differences. Mm-hmm. Obvious differences. And so what they're wanting to do is erase those differences. And the way they're doing that is to change men. And so they want this is one of the things that they say, is that you need to be a democratic man. Not only do you need to be, they admit that you should be strong and all that kind of thing, sort of. But the real focus is that you need new masculine virtues. That these masculine virtues must dominate everything about you as a man. And they are compassion, empathy, nurturing, and a fierce egalitarianism. This way, when you embrace this as the new man, you will finally let all the marginalized groups that have been in history that you have put down be included in your rights, in your privileges, and that they can, what did he say? He goes, so that they can shine in the sun just like white men basically have in the past.
Well, where does that it sounds like they're trying to make them women. So where does that leave women? What's left for women to be?
Well, this is where the blurring of the lines between the genders and sexes is that women, it's interesting, feminism says that they are all about women, right? But really the template that they've made for being their sexuality is to be like a man. So the more they're like men, the more they hold men's positions, the more they have what men have. That's the freedom of feminism.
To be more competitive.
Yes, to be more competitive.
Aggressive.
To be more in a men's. So we're having a role reversal. Women wanted to be more like men. So when the women's rights movement started, it was about rights, of legal rights. And you're a lawyer, Jenny, so you know. And that's fine, and that's good, and that was progress for women. But when women got equality, then it was switched to being about equality of outcomes, which is the danger of equality. That is the equality that destroys nations. So when I mention equality from now on, I'm talking about equity. I'm talking about this equality of outcomes. And when women became equal with men and looked at it in terms of equality of outcomes, they entered into a very frustrating state of being. Because the only way to differentiate themselves from the men is through competitive money, earning money, the jobs they have. Because this is the thing, when you say everyone's the same, human nature wants to be better. You know, we want to succeed. We have pride. And so we compete. Competition comes out of that. And that's what in early America, when equality opened up to everyone, competition was spurred on. And this created a lot of tension in society. And that's a healthy tension when it's governed by good morals, religion, an understanding of political freedom, all of these things that balance that urge to be equal and successful in that way. So being equal this way, when the women decided to have equality of outcomes, they looked around and were like, but we're not getting everything the men get. You know, we're not in the same positions. We're not the same CEOs. You know, we don't hold as many positions in Congress. So the goal then became to pull the men down. Just like Margaret Thatcher said about it in economics, that, you know, socialism, this kind of equality, is not about raising the poor up, but by pulling the rich down. This kind of equality, sexual egalitarianism, isn't about everyone rising to be the best they can be as their own sexual identity, but it's to pull down those that they see having oppressed them. So this is why this whole psychological guideline stuff is really not even about sexuality. It's just about a cultural Marxist kind of agenda. And we need to really expose this, because it's in our schools. And, you know, when you tell little boys and little girls that, you know, you can be the exact same, and you put them into competition, you're going to have girls say, wait a minute, you promised me to be equal, and it's not turning out that way.
Because Johnny's faster, stronger. In the workplace, men work more hours because women still choose to have babies. There's all kinds of differences between men and women that you can't just erase because you want it to, because you believe in some kind of egalitarianism. And when you say that the new democratic manhood is all about fierce egalitarianism, what you're telling men is you had better treat everybody as equal. That means you better not be as successful. You better not be competitive. You better not be aggressive. You better not be provider or protector. You need to be tamed. You need to be brought down and become this compassionate, empathizing, nurturing marshmallow. And the other thing that's obnoxious about that is that it assumes that men aren't compassionate, right,
and that men aren't empathetic. And, you know, providing for your family is actually nurturing your family. It's just that men and women do these things differently. But when you have your whole mindset on egalitarianism, you're going to be constantly at war with anyone who's better than you. And this is the problem with the feminists. They're never going to be happy, not just because they're bitter and angry, but because women will always be weaker than men. Women will always be afraid, for example. If you think that we should all be equal and there should be no tension or anything like that between the sexes, you will always still feel threatened by men, because men are always going to be stronger. So women are always going to feel anxious, and especially if there's a breakdown in trust. Mm-hmm. So you need to bring back the understanding of the identities and how they're different, instead of seeking fierce egalitarianism. I mean, that's the last thing that we should be seeking with sexuality in our country, in our world. And what we need is an understanding of what identity is. And America has a big identity crisis.
How so?
Don't you think? I think it's definitely, I mean, they need one big psychological help, but not this kind. Actually, they need theological help, and I'll explain why. In that, we don't understand identity. We don't understand where we get our identity from. We don't understand what our purpose is as human beings or as women or even as individuals. We don't understand our meaning in life. And until we understand that, none of this is going to matter. It's just going to be more warring against identity groups. And so that's one thing I'd like to explain just real quickly. It's kind of a reverse pyramid, if you can picture this in your head, a reverse pyramid when it comes to identity, in that every human being at the top, all human beings are all humans. We have a human identity, okay? We all share in those same traits. We are all made in the image of God. We're all rational, some more than others. We all have a soul. You know, even if you disagree with all that, you can at least agree with me that there are some objective traits to being human. We're not dogs, you're not horses, we're human beings. So, and we share, you know, all the common things. I don't care where you are on the planet, if you're human, and we share the same thing. And one thing you need to understand is that when you talk about identity, you're talking about something not in isolation unto itself. Our identity, who we are is tied to a purpose. And that purpose is intrinsically relational. It's social. So it's really funny. They talk about our gender and our sex being socially constructed. No, it's not. It's objectively designed for a social purpose. And the reason that this is important is that you've got to understand that at each level of what our identity is. And as human beings, we were designed with the purpose to be in relation with who? God, our creator, first and foremost. And that's a relationship built on love, agape love. That's just at that top of that reverse pyramid. All of us have that in common. Every human being, our identity, our purpose, you that I'm talking to, if you don't understand that your purpose is to live out as God's image on this planet and to create and to rule over it with love, to represent God here on earth and to be in relationship with him, you're going to have something missing in your understanding of yourself. And so that's at the top. Second to that, when it comes to identity, is our sex. So you're either a man or a woman. And all men, I don't care where you are on the planet, have the same things, same qualities, same traits to one degree or another. First of all, physically, biologically, you're a male, okay? You have the same chromosomes type that make you male. You share that. You're made and constructed in a way as a male human being for a certain task. And again, just like humans were made and their purpose is relational, so is our sexuality. The purpose of it is relational. It's not just going and doing your own thing, living unto yourself in isolation. It's not true for human beings. They're to be in relationship to God, their creator. And men, as made, are to be in relationship with whom? Women. And women are made to be in relationship with men. This isn't only the marriage relationship. It's all kinds of relationships, but it's the archetypical relationship of the masculine and the feminine that we see in everything, you know, in literature, in mythology. We see it across the history, all cultures. It is a relationship that's complementary to each other. So it's an ideal relationship, but it's also very real and very well, perfectly manifested in the marriage relationship, where you really see those two coming together in love, that erotic love that's unique to that relationship, to the male-female type relationship in the complementary sense. Because the purpose of the man was made for the woman, to protect her, provide for her, lead her. He was given the capacity, the body to do that, the kind of logical thinking skills and orderly thinking that he has. His psychology is made up. And again, this is general speaking. I mean, all men have either their weaknesses or strengths, because you have to develop your manhood. And that's not just, you're born male, but you become a man.
Right.
And so you're going to have variations in how this is expressed by each individual, but still, the core purpose of your masculinity is not to be a fierce egalitarian, or to
nurture somebody in some kind of weird psychological fuzzy-wuzzy way that makes you soft and weak. It's not that. That's not the purpose of your masculinity. And if we don't understand purpose, we're not going to get anywhere. If we don't talk about purpose, we're going to continue to be lost when it comes to understanding sexuality. If we don't understand that it's subjectively designed, although differently expressed in culture, and that it has a specific purpose by design, then we're going to be just all creating our own little realities that are going to be at war with each other perpetually. So you need to understand that men, your masculinity is made to make babies with women, if that's, and I'll get to your calling as an individual, to protect, provide for them, and to nurture them. Now, does that mean that women cannot help in that way? That they can't be influencers, that women don't have their own calling and that they don't have their own strengths? No, they do. They do. Because women, what is her purpose? What is your purpose as a woman? Why are you designed female?
Nurture.
To complement the man, to be in relationship with the man. Because again, your sexuality is made for social purposes. It's not just made for you to be alone on an island again. It's to be in relationship. As a human being, all of us humans are supposed to be in relationship with God. Male and female sexuality were made for each other so that we wouldn't be alone on this planet, so that we would make babies, so that we could use both of our gifts in the masculine and feminine as made in the image of God to bring glory to this planet and to spread love on this planet. Your purpose as a man, as a woman, in those spheres and as a human being is to promote love. It is. Jordan Peterson talks about that to understand humanity is to find meaning, and that our calling is to be responsible. I would say our purpose, the purpose we have, the meaning we have, it is responsibility, but I'm putting it in terms of love. Responsible love, yes, because love is about the other person. It's love is intrinsically itself social. So we're made to be in community. We're made to be social. We're made to be loving to each other by the way we were designed. So again, let's think about that upside down pyramid again. We have the human beings we all have in common, a common love that we're supposed to be directed, male, female under that. I'm not a male. You're not, men aren't women. So they each have their own common spheres as according to their sexuality. And all women have the same, qualities and same biology, and that make us female. There's a reason why we're female. And I'm not going to hear and even get caught up in the outliers, the 0.003% or whatever who are born with both genitalia. So then under that, at the very bottom, the most narrow of identity is the individual. And the individual is unique. There is no one like me. There's no one like you. Everyone listening to this, you are completely unique as an individual. There's just no one like you. And you're loved as that individual in all your special traits. And no one can impose their identity onto you as an individual. Just like no one can tell you that you're not a woman or that you're not a human being. You are an individual. And sometimes we get these things all messed up, all reversed. And as an individual, your calling, what is your purpose, is you need to find that out. I can't tell you what your calling and purpose is as an individual. I can talk to you about what your purpose is as a human being. And as an individual, your purpose is still that as a human being. And if you're a woman or a man, that is your purpose according to your masculinity. How you express that in your individual ways is going to be unique to you. As long as you're not deviating from being human and being your own sex. So in other words, I'm a woman. My calling and my purpose in life, shared with everyone else, is to be loving to humanity, to love my creator, to seek dominion over this planet in a good way, healthy way, creative, take care of what God has given us, to shine his light and his image in this world, and to be in relationship to men. I mean, not that, now, don't misunderstand, I am in relationship to other women too. That's humanity. We're all in relationship with each other. But uniquely female, I'm made to be in relationship with a man. And so I married. And so Denise here, I I'm a human being, serving, hopefully, God, loving, and then entering into a loving covenant relationship with a man to complement him and to love him. Some women don't. They show their feminine complementary nature to the masculine in other ways outside of marriage. But any way that you're doing it, it's still that purpose of helping, influencing, supporting, and caretaking, and all of the things that are very feminine. And then me as an individual, how do I express that? Well, I'm a writer. I am doing podcasts. I do very different things. I'm an artist, and I express my love, my relationship to society by my own unique gifts. And everyone will have their own unique way of doing things. We get this mixed up when we either define all individuals by what we say the sexuality is. Like, we understand the complementary nature, so we turn that individual and say, well, you all have to be the same role. Not completely eradicating the individual unique differences and not giving space for the expression of that humanity and of that sexuality. And so that can be oppressive, and you see that in religious circles sometimes. But we also have a problem here in that we've kind of turned the upside-down pyramid up and made the individual feelings, desires, my individual uniqueness is defining my sexuality. Suddenly, I'm a girl who likes to dress as a boy, so therefore I'm going to define what my sexuality is. Or I'm going to determine who I am by my individual preferences of what I am as a human being. Create my own identity. No, that's not the way it is. It starts from creation, design as a human, as your sex, and then your unique individual and living all that out according to your purpose of loving others. And however that's manifested with you as an individual or as a man and a woman. And we don't hear a lot about that now. What we're hearing about is you can be whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. You can identify yourself the way you want. It's existentialism gone awry. It's subjectivism at its worst. This is going to sound strange, but Søren Kierkegaard, who is the father of existentialism, and he's the one who said subjectivity is truth. Remember that? Mm-hmm. But one thing is that we can really learn from Kierkegaard, and we probably need to revive some of his works because he understood. He wasn't a subjectivist like subjectivists are today. He did not say that truth is subjective. He said subjectivity is truth. Okay, and let me explain. He didn't believe that the subject, me, the individual, creates my own truth. He was saying, me, the subject, if I'm not experiencing in a meaningful way and living according to truth as a subject, then it's meaningless. See the difference?
Yes.
He taught that the way you understood yourself, your own identity, was, he has this long introduction in saying, the self relating to the self, knowing the self. And what he's talking about is that you know yourself in relationship to who you are as an individual, but that relationship hinges on being informed by your creator. So God, as your designer, informs you, individual, that you know and relating to, of who you are as a human being, as a man or a woman, and as you as a unique individual. Others don't define you. And that was big Kierkegaard. Others don't define you. Outliers in society don't define you. You don't define you. You express you in a unique way, but you don't define you. God defines you. Your creator defines you. And this is something really lost in society right now. Mm-hmm. And because we're all running around defining ourselves. Well, what happens in that is if you don't believe that there's an objective designer of who you are and your identity, that you get to know. Life is about getting to know yourself as God designed you, and then getting to know others. And because if you don't know yourself, there's nothing that you're giving in your reflection to other people. And we really need to understand who we are in light of the objective truth of design and purpose. But the problem is that now we have that rejected. Now we can all make our own identity what we want it to be. And what do we have? We have warring of subjective groups. My identity matters. My identity defines the group. And so that's what we have, outliers defining masculinity and outliers defining femininity. This is problematic because if you can have this kind of identity being defined by others, then as Kierkegaard said, you are negated. Mm-hmm. Your actual individuality, your sexuality, your humanity is negated by whatever another impose upon you as your identity. You aren't free. You don't have a uniqueness. You are at the mercy of the most powerful of whoever has the power to define you. And this is what I find very problematic and disturbing about the APA guidelines, is we're telling people the others are defining your sexuality for you. In the name of them saying they want free expression of their own sexuality. It's ironic. But really what they're doing is, for us to be equal, I've got to change you. I'm going to be me in my own sexual individual expression. Everyone else needs to accept me in that. And therefore, if you can't, you need to change who you are in order to accommodate me. Imagine if that happens with the force of government and law behind it.
Scary.
It's very scary. And so we need to wake up and understand where our identity comes from, what masculinity is and femininity is. And these are complex issues. These aren't easy things to work through. And I'll be talking about them in future podcasts and in the book I'm writing. But we need to understand this. And most of all, we need to understand that our identity and our self and who we are in our sexuality is not theoretical. It's not just some kind of game we play and expressing ourselves in our own individual, hyper-individualistic way as if we live on a planet alone. Our purpose is social. And I think that's where Jordan Peterson gets his responsibility. Our purpose is inherently other-centered. Self-interested too, but it's social. It's an interaction. It's a relationship. We were made to be in relationship. And we need to understand that at every level of our identity. And the first question we should be asking if you're confused about any of this is, what is my purpose? You know, archaeologists, when they go on digs and they find something, the first thing they try to figure out is, what is this? And what's its purpose? The telos, this is what I'm made for, my design. And we live in a society that people don't understand what their purpose is. They don't understand why they're here. They think they're just here to feed their faces and talk on iPhones and sit at the trough and just lap up things. They don't understand purpose. They don't understand their purpose as a human being or as a man and woman or even as an individual. They're lost. And they're open to being defined and manipulated and controlled by others because they don't understand what their design is objectively by their designer. And most importantly, in that purpose and understanding the relational aspect of our existence and of sexuality is the purpose of love. And I don't mean fuzzy-wuzzy love. I'm talking about real love. And John Paul II, what was it he said? He said, the opposite of love is not hatred, but it's using another person as a means for your own selfish purposes. We are living in a society of hate, of not love, of that. We're living in a society where people are using others as means for their own purposes. From pornography to politics, to education, to psychology. You know, you're using other people as social experiments to advance something. We're changing groups to make people feel good about their own pathologies. We are using others as a means for our own purposes instead of us all living according to the one purpose given to us by our designer. So on that note, thank you, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you, Denise. I really want to add, if I might, that I think it's very loving of you in your relational purpose to help us all understand this better so that we can then accept ourselves and our own purposes. So thank you.
Thank you.